What? So good morning everyone, welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Silence is the abode of bliss. Silence is perfection. As I am, as all is, or in the dreamer's words, as all is meant to be. Character disturbs silence. Floats in it, doesn't dissolve. As all in you returns to silence, bliss manifests. Okay, so just reminding everyone, we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. You can send your questions directly to me. I will answer your questions now. Well, my friend, I will not say your name, of course, and I will use your story a little bit to exemplify something which is very common. It is the natural for more or less all seekers. Don't take me wrong, but this will be important for you and for all who are listening. So these questions, hi Shrima, it's been a while. I want to follow the path, but I don't understand several things very well. I'm just a beginner. My practice consists on focusing on my chest and dissolving all negative feelings. I can barely do an hour a day. I don't know if guidance is already trying to get to me, even though my mind is getting more quiet in a superficial peace. Have a great evening. Thank you for your time. So these appear to be simple questions from a beginner that is interesting in follow the path of freedom. But the background of this story has something more to it. So this seeker, you, have already come to me some time ago, probably more than a year ago, maybe, and asked for guidance. I always ask, are you sure? Because it is intense, it is demanding, it is difficult, la 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 la. And yes, that is what I want. Please help me, and so and so. And as I've given some technique of meditation just to see how sincere, how willful the seeker was. And eventually, just after a few days of practice, it came up that, no, this is not really what I wanted, because, well, my ideas that come from Advaita tell me that I should just sit there silent, and this is what I feel I should do. And even more than that, I had a guru first, someone that I didn't went to because it was far and I had my duties, obligations, and so and so. But with your guidance, I've understood that I need to go to her, and this is what I will focus on doing. So, and as this presentation was being made, I asked, are you sure? Because, look, as work begins, resistances rise up, and the natural thing to happen is nothing. It is all these ideas coming up just to protect the reality that you are living, with big promises of this and that, but eventually it's just to protect what is there, and nothing will happen. But there was no opening for this. And I already said, see if this is really what you want, because I accept to give guidance once and then it's over. Yes, I'm sure, thank you for your time, all of that. Perfect. So now let's go more or less. I have no idea about the time, probably 1 year, maybe more. These messages come like There was no previous contact. Only in the end it was informed the name, but nothing else. So I have to tell you now. So when we talked, you didn't present yourself as a beginner. And you had this idea focused about going to see the one you called your guru and to live with her and all of that. And this was sure in your mind that you had to do it. So why are you sending messages and everything is the same? And now presenting as a beginner and not even saying about our previous talks. Okay. This is something very important for all seekers, because you will have to deal with this to some extent. You have to realize that spiritual practice begins in your comfort zone, and as it becomes serious and more mature, it moves away gradually from your comfort zone to the unknown domains. But before entering the unknown domains, it means exiting the known domains. And this is the difficult part, because you simply don't want to. What is this don't want to? And what is this feeling of I want to? Well, this feeling of I want to is the aspiration of a calling that is there, of something you know it's by far more real. But this I don't want to, this comes from the identification with the character. And the character wants to survive and prosper in its own story, in its own way. So whatever is there in your world that you adore and what you hate, you will want to preserve them both, because they are a part, they are the blocks of your reality. So whatever spiritual practice that feels comfortable for you, in whatever way you deem comfort, because sometimes you want the sweet practices because it is comfort to you, according to your characteristics. But if you're a hard-headed seeker, tough, if life has been tough, for example, you will prefer the toughest practices because they fit, or by any other reason. So whatever is your comfort zone, as at the physical level, at the emotional level, at the mental level, the spiritual practice will happen in that comfort zone. And without guidance, for sure, whatever you embrace as a spiritual practice will be transformed to fit the narrative, to fit your world. This is the most natural thing to happen, because it's too big, it's too much. Guidance is the voice beyond your world. Like, how do you call this? A lighthouse in the ocean. As the boats are sailing, it's complete darkness. They have no idea where to go. They may be convinced that, oh yes, I know where I'm going, but it's all blank. So the lighthouse brings the ships in a safe way towards the shore. So does guidance. Because, well, your preference, your thoughts, everything is conditioned to your world. And everything will fight to maintain it, despite your better intentions. This is why surrender is a must. Because Without that surrender, you will just be in the level of I agree, I disagree. And it doesn't matter if you're agreeing or disagreeing. But if you're following guidance because you're agreeing, you're not following guidance, you're just following your preferences. And you will stop doing so when you don't agree. This is why guidance sometimes comes in a way that it's not logical, it's not even right. It is to test surrender, because surrender is the highest level. It is the highest, the most perfected level of a seeker of truth. And if guidance comes first as in a logical way, in a way that you can agree, this is just preparation. Preparation. Eventually, it will have to take you beyond that. Because there's not an exact way where everyone has to go or where you have to go. It is more about breaking those beliefs, breaking the character's narrative, softening the character until dissolution. So despite your best intentions, this is what tends to happen. And sometimes, like in this case, to avoid working now, there's a projection into the future where I will work and sacrifice and la 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 la. But this has nothing to do with the future. It has everything to do with the present, where the work is already being undertaken and where there's the need to stop that work. These are mind games where you get played into your own dramas. And everybody, without exception, goes through these things. So the obstacles in the spiritual path, it is these layers after layers of resistances from everything that goes beyond the narrative of the character, that individuality, that body-mind complex, that has a story, that has a past, that aims for a future. It doesn't matter what kind of a future. If it is a human successful future, if it is an enlightened future, it doesn't matter. It is the future of that character. And while it dreams about a future, it wants just to preserve what it has now. So the vision of improvement is very good, but that's not really its aim. It's to preserve what's now. And some sort of a balance has to be kept. The key to spiritual practice, one of the keys, is intensity. Because you will always measure intensity according to your level of normalcy. So that's your measure. What's normal for you versus what's intense. So the spiritual work happens in intensity, and that is forcing the boundaries of your reality. And as you work in intensity, you will see the resistances rising up. So my practices consist on focusing on my chest and dissolving all my negative feelings. What does this mean? You're visualizing, picking up the negative emotions and dissolving. And where are these emotions coming from? There's this idea that everything is mental work. But that's not really the case. Even this week, probably you're watching or you will be watching. I received a feedback from a seeker that is working intensely, and it's becoming clear that all the ideas that were there previously to these Advaitic teachings, to this vision, they are correct in a way, but not this is the fruits are like this, but that's not the way you get to those fruits. And this idea that everything is done by the mind is incorrect. But you can only see this with hard work, dedication, intensity. And without that intensity, well, that's the reality that you have left. So it will be the only reality for you. And it will be real. But that doesn't mean that there's not something beyond that. And reading books, reading others' experiences, reading scriptures, this is good to a sense. Scriptures, yes, because it's different. But they will not give you the direct vision of what it means. It's just a translation of something that then your mind puts together. I usually tell this story about one time some yoga practitioners, yoga students, they were, how do you call this? Not really scholars, but almost. And a simple concept, don't remember which one, that I was explaining. We spent more or less 3 hours, and they were refuting because this was written and that was written. I said, oh, okay, so enough. Do this practice like this, we'll talk in 3 days. After 3 days, when they came back, they apologized for their posture, and they've realized that the teachings that we were studying, the interpretation that they were giving had nothing to do with the actual practice on itself. Even these readings, they are just ways to fill your mind with noise. It may be important, it may be, not sure. Because sometimes you have a vision of that which you'll encounter or that which you may encounter as experiences, and it will help you to understand them. Maybe, but always, practice comes first. Reading is not practice. If it is a scripture, yes, it is practice. But it should be read after intense meditation, in that meditative mood, with that respect, that reverence, that focusing of the mind. Not as just random reading. So all structures that are inbuilt, they are there to protect that which you know as reality, to maintain it, to preserve it, or to make it prosper. But prosper in those same mechanics. So any real serious practice will bring fears and tons of resistances. And the more intense it becomes, more resistance will arise. And if you have no clue about this, what will happen is you will, how do you say this, identify with all emotions that are coming, and you will arise to the natural conclusion. Either this is not for me, I have to stop this, or I will do something else which is much better. It doesn't matter what kind of technique is used. What matters is to stop that now. Tomorrow is always a better day for that, as you can see in your own experience. Whatever it is, it will start tomorrow. The real spiritual practice begins when things start going sideways, when you're losing balance, when you're losing control, when you're not being able to keep it together. And that means when your confusion, when your hell is surfacing. Until then, it's just preparation. But if you're there just for the game, just for the fun, just for the pleasure, then how will you be able to reach this level? So, in this, where we have these physical practices, reading is for everybody reads. Spiritual books, very few meditate. So that which is more broadened, we can look at it as the easiest aspect, because, well, when you are reading and studying it, the mind is engaged and it is feeding itself. It's projecting. It's something new. There's food, there's nurturing. So everything is fine. Balance is there. The balance of your world, of your illusion. The more, then you start meditation. And you start meditating. And as you can fit that in that same narrative, it continues. But if you start intensifying, and first it is new, it is something that the mind likes. Sometimes there is good experiences with it, so it becomes promising. It is enthusiastic about it. It continues, but then the test of time is, well, and time continues, goes on. The experience becomes repetition, repetition, repetition. The aspect of the new starts fading away. It's known, it's there, it's the same. So all those currents that were feeding this aspect of the mind, that were fitting in that illusion, starts disappearing. And this is when that practice usually ends. And it ends before it begins. And if by any chance you happen to receive guidance and say, no, no, this level of practice is not good, it has to be more intense. For 5 hours, at least a day, minimum. Then, as you subject yourself to that practice, everything starts screaming. Aha, now it started. But usually, that's where it dies also, because of that identification. The same identification that makes you sway and invest in all these impressions that are arising. The same identification. There is a term which is used as effortless, and that has been misunderstood. Effortless is something that will be there when all levels of resistance, when all layers, or at least the majority of them, or depending on what we're talking about, some big portion of it is transcended. It doesn't mean that effortless means that whatever spiritual practice that is there, it has to be effortless to be correct. This is the lazy vision, or the vision of the lazy. But it has nothing to do with that. And there's been a lot of translations of these terms that have created more confusion. Perhaps if this confusion wasn't there, 90% of the seekers of truth, or the so-called seekers of truth, these days would just give up. So whatever spiritual practice you have, if you have any, I challenge you to make a test. To practice it in an intense way. You just multiply by 5 the time that you're investing in it, just multiply by 5. And let's see what starts to happen. And there's a massive, massive difference between your mental projections, your vision of what is spiritual work, with actual spiritual work. And these days especially, everything is presented as fast food. Just order, eat it, enjoy it. And so it is spiritual practice. That has produced a very distant vision of what it is. How powerful these tools are. And there's a need to experience actual spiritual practice, to have a vision, to get back that knowledge of what intensity is, how spiritual practice really works. Okay. And for this reason also, more or less next year, because I'm still preparing that, there will be available intense retreats of meditation, silent meditation. 2 techniques available. For those who want to dive deep into spiritual work. But still soon for that. So whatever you're having, multiply it by 5. And you will start to see the difference with one thing and the other. Because without intensity, no real progress. Because, well, you may become more wise, stable, but illusion is just adapting, not dissolving, adapting. It is changing the shapes, the circumstances, the experiences, but it's just adapting. And you look at someone that is completely restless, agitated, aggressive, blind, and you look at someone which is very wise, calm, peaceful, but not enlightened. So what is the difference between them? It's still illusion. So that from one point to the other, in this transition that time conveys, there was adapting of an experience. So the spiritual practice has to come in a level of intensity that surpasses the capacity to adapt. So in a normal seeker, steps are given once they are understood. For a seeker of truth, steps are given and understanding comes much, much later. Much, much later. Sometimes there's a lot of time has passed that he went through something. And then he understands, oh, after a long time. Sometimes it's more fast. But if things are in the right pace, understanding takes a lot of time to catch up. But once you're walking and Once you understand it and give the step, it is a dead step. It will not be able to give you much because you lost all the power of it and the capacity to adapt will be at its best. So probably you'll become wise, but being wise is not a goal, unless it is. Freedom is the goal. Okay. So for today, that's it. Next satsang will be Saturday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, make the best use of your time. Make it count. Watch.